Good evening, everyone. This is the second day of the Miles City Flood Awareness Day. And today we have Mr. Todd Chambers with the National Weather Service, who's going to present weather.
All right, well, thank everybody for having me. We're going to go over kind of what we do here at the Weather Service to support you during flood season, and then we'll go over kind of what the outlook is coming up for the spring and summer as far as the Tongue River and the Yellowstone River go. So if everybody can see my side here, we'll start off with our office and our products. So here's the offices of the National Weather Service across the United States. 124 offices, and looking there in Montana, you get the Billings office, and we cover an area from around Livingston to Baker, and from the northern portion of Rosebud County down into Sheridan County. And the reason we have Sheridan County is because our radar actually sampled Sheridan County better than Riverton's radar does, so we have a little piece of Wyoming there. This is a look inside of our office. We have coverage 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So if you have a question at 8 p.m. on Christmas Day, somebody's here to answer your questions. Our phone number is public, so we don't mind at all getting questions from folks. There's a lot of things that happen in off hours that people may have questions about, especially convective weather or flooding and that kind of thing. So we're here all the time. Right now we have a staff of 23 meteorologists and personnel here, some of them supporting our electronics and computer systems, and the folks that go out and fix the airport weather monitoring station there at Miles City. So this is our staffing and kind of what our office looks like. We have flood alerts, so focusing here on hydrology. We have flash floods, which is rapid flooding, can also be dam failure type stuff. And then we have river floods. These are longer term flood events, and also include ice jams. Ice jams can build up pretty fast. Sometimes they last a little bit longer. And we saw a little bit of that on the Tongue River here this winter, where we did reach about 15 feet on the Tongue River, which is around major flood stage there. Luckily, it was far enough upstream from Miles City that we didn't see any issues there in town, but certainly had some flooding and inundation in some of the fields for areas that were further south. Here's looking at our flood alerts for flash floods. And what are flash floods? Again, they occur from heavy and excessive rainfall downstream in areas that may experience a little bit more rainfall. So you could have a storm that forms upstream and sends a wall of water down your direction. So it doesn't necessarily have to be flooding or raining, excuse me, in your area to get flash floodings. The key elements are the rainfall's intensity. So when we do get those 2 to 3 inch an hour rainfall rates, we really start to pay attention to flash flooding, because a lot of places have some fairly clay soil, doesn't absorb water real well in some places, and so that water is going to run off pretty quick. The duration, slow moving storms, if that rain just sits over one place for a long period of time, that can cause flash flooding. If you're in a steep terrain, the topography can impact how fast water is moving. Again, soil conditions, like I said, if you've got rock, or we get a lot of concrete, asphalt, clay soils, that kind of thing can also impact flash flooding. And ground cover. So do we have anything to stop the water from moving downhill? So is there grass, trees, vegetation of any kind, that kind of thing can help prevent the water from moving quite as fast. In areas like burn scars where we've burned off all the vegetation, those are areas that are certainly more susceptible to flash flooding, because there's nothing really to stop the water moving downhill once that ground cover is gone. So how do we get a hold of you, and what should you know about looking out for these flash floods and flooding events? So we send out outlooks up to a week ahead. These are the first indication that the hazardous weather may develop. So we start talking about it when we start seeing in the models out several days in advance, up to a week ahead, that hey, it looks like this system is going to bring some heavy rain. We'll start talking about that to give people a heads up. We want people to have enough time to take precautions to prepare and protect their property, livestock, and equipment, and that kind of thing. Up to 3 days ahead, we'll start to issue watches if it still looks like the probability is there for flooding of some kind. Again, a watch just means conditions are favorable for the development of whatever it is, in this case, flooding. And it lets you know that the significant weather may impact your region, but location, timing, severity is not fully known. So we know that there's an event coming. There could be some details that need to be worked out, so we'll issue a watch just to get that word out. And then up to 36 hours ahead, especially in hydrology situations, we will issue warnings. Okay, and this means it's time to take action. We're fairly certain this is going to happen. We're fairly certain about the timing and the location, so we're going to issue a warning. And that means whatever actions you need to take to protect yourself and your property, now's the time. If it means that you need to leave your home to get to higher ground, if it means that you need to move your livestock or equipment away from low-lying areas, that kind of stuff, that has to happen now because the event is imminent. And then we have advisories. So these are up to 12 hours ahead, a little bit shorter lead time than warnings. And again, this is areas we have a little bit less certainty, or we think that the event is going to end up being less impactful than we maybe had thought previously. So it's still trying to give you an idea that there could be some flooding that causes some inconvenience, but it's probably not life-threatening flooding. And again, it warrants a little less of a warning threat. So we go with an advisory, be aware this weather's coming, and it could be a problem, but it's probably not going to be life-threatening. Looking at river floods here, river floods occur from extended periods of moderate to heavy rainfall. Again, once we get the soils saturated, they're not going to hold any more water, and that water is going to run off into creeks, streams, and eventually rivers. So and that process is usually fairly gradual. A lot of the storms we see here in the spring and early summer are kind of 3-day storms. And so you're getting a lot of rain over 3 days, and that eventually works into the rivers and eventually works downstream. Spring snowmelt is another issue that we have where, it can come out really fast and work into those rivers and streams, and then you get rain on top of them, already flooded rivers, and then we can have some issues as well. So it's not as rapid a response as what you'd see in flash flooding, but it certainly can be very impactful. And you can see really huge volumes of water moving through some of these waterways that normally don't experience that. In order to keep abreast of all this, you can monitor these river observations. We have 2 gauges there circled in red in the Miles City area. You also have gauges upstream. Anything in the green there has a forecast associated with it. So you can actually see the forecast, and you can catch that all on our webpage or at water.noaa.gov. When you click on one of these little icons in there, that'll pop up a little page, a little preview of the river forecast. And in the red circle up here, you get the full gauge page, and you can see the rest of the information, as well as other information such as precipitation amounts and radar data and that kind of thing to help keep you in the loop on what's going on in your area. A little bit more here, observations on water.noaa.gov are generally provided by the USGS or the DNRC for the state of Montana, or the Wyoming State Engineer's Office down in Wyoming, and DNRC is in Montana, The forecast, though, if you see it looking here in the blue, that's the data, and the forecast is in purple there circled. That data is provided by the National Weather Service, and that comes out of our office via a bunch of forecasters that we have that concentrate just on rivers in Kansas City. And so they produce the initial forecast and give it to us, and then we take a look at it, and if everything looks good, we transmit it out to you guys, and that's what it shows up as on our page. So you're getting a forecast out now in about 7 days, and it also includes about 3 days of precipitation in that forecast going forward. So if you have a big storm coming, it's within about 3 days, you start seeing those river levels change because that increased precipitation showing up from the models and from our forecasts. We also have historical data, so you can see what the recent crests and historic crests are, compare how this event is comparing to other events that have happened. Most people in a given area that have been there a long time kind of like to compare, how's this flood event looking compared to another one that I've been through. So you can do that via this webpage as well. You can see that information. A new tool that we have that's coming, we have to stay tuned for, but it's coming, and there'll be flood inundation maps. And so there's been a big push through the Weather Service to do flood inundation mapping and GIS mapping so that our flood forecast can kind of give you an idea of what areas will be impacted and by how much. So that'll be displayed on this page as well. It's not available just yet everywhere, but it is coming in the next year to year and a half. So that's something good to look forward to. I know a lot of people have pickup trucks and think that pickup trucks will get you out of just about everything. I just want to make sure, take a look at this and see that, even the pickup truck can float. Again, turnaround, don't drown. It's better to wait a little bit. Flash flooding especially is usually a short-term thing. It comes up fast and goes down fast. Flash flood warnings usually are tapered to about 3 hours. And usually after 3 hours, we're able to cancel those warnings because the water's receded. So it's a lot better to wait or find an alternate route than just to try to push a bad situation and end up with your really expensive pickup truck ending up underwater, or worse, somebody drowning. So just want to continue to impress on people that going through flooded areas in your vehicle is a really bad idea. And we'll probably see more of that here as we go along through this presentation. So here's a heavy rainfall event. Actually occurred in Miles City, all-time daily record rainfall of 2.91 inches. The old record was 2.71 set in 1964. Again, this happened in 2016. Significant ponding of water, as you can see on the left, and then the usual places like the interstate underpass. They're going underwater, and you can see little ice rafts of hail that are also included in that, as this thunderstorm did produce some hail around there as well. So you can get some very heavy rainfall in a very short period of time that can cause problems in the Miles City and Custer County areas. So it's always important, like I said, to know what's going on, be aware of any warnings or watches that are out there, and then heed locals officials' advice as far as travel. Sometimes it's better just to stay off the roads and let that water go down. This is the Colorado Front Range. Back in 2013, this was up to Rocky Mountain National Park, the road that goes up there. You can see that in a short period of time, they ended up with $2 to $3 billion in damage. Nearly 500 miles of roadway were damaged, 50 bridges destroyed. So you don't necessarily have this quite this impactful type of flooding in Custer County because the terrain is not quite as steep, but in other parts of our forecast area, there is the potential for this kind of catastrophic flash flooding to happen if the thunderstorm were to anchor itself over higher terrain for a long period of time. This is looking into Shepherd here in Yellowstone County back in 2015. Just got a little video showing kind of the water and how it's going over the roadways, etc. And again, it may not be a lot of water. It could be a few inches, but it only takes a few inches to float your car, maybe a couple more than that to float a truck. The other thing is you can't see through this water, so you have no idea what the road condition is underneath this water as it's flowing across. So it could be washed out in places. There could be a hole in there. The culvert could come out, and you're going to end up in big trouble. So stay back, take an alternate route, turn around. Don't drown. You can also see the amount of hail that the storm piled up here in the bottom right. There were just piles and piles left over after the water did recede. All right, so how do we stay informed? Again, a big push here to go to our website and take a look, because we've got a lot of information here. It's available, and if there's really important information, it'll be on the front page here for you, so you can see. Going to weather.gov, it'll bring you up to this page with a map. You click on this area wherever you're at. In this case, for Custer County, and that'll bring you to our front page where you can see a weather story here talking about flooding potential. Kind of give you an idea of how much waters we're expecting. And then you got down here in this point and click map down here, you can actually click on the forecast and get a localized forecast for 7 days, as well as see any watches or warnings that we may have available. These weather stories, again, not just for flooding, but for just about anything, especially, we're getting into severe weather season, so you'll see a lot of stuff on there about, what the probabilities of thunderstorms or severe storms That'll all be on our front page. And again, the map down here in the bottom, you can actually click on that and get a forecast for that position. Even if it's not a big city, you can be out in the middle of nowhere, and you'll get your forecast for the next 7 days that has a lot of detail in it. So shout out to just take a look at our webpage. There's a lot of information there. If you ever get on there and you have questions on where things are at, give us a call. We don't mind answering questions and walking you through the webpage to find out the information that you need. Wireless emergency alerts. So if you all have your smartphones tend to go off for a lot of different things. Flash flooding, especially the elevated flash flooding. So maybe not just the normal flash flood warnings, or the typical ones we have, but if we elevate that threat to a higher level as far as these flash flood warnings go, if we're pretty sure that we're going to have catastrophic flash flooding, that becomes a flash flood emergency, and that will go to your cell phone and start yelling at you to take a look at something. So these emergency messages are sent by authorized government authorities, including us. And you get some for Amber Alerts as well. These are kind of on the same level. We want to make sure that whoever's within range of these warnings, even if it's in the middle of the night, and I know sometimes people don't want to be woken up in the middle of the night, but sometimes you need to be, or people that work at night or drive, people that are driving trucks or whatever. These wireless alerts can be life-saving. They give you the information that we need to convey to you so that hopefully you can stay safe. So we have alerts for severe thunderstorms, tornado, and flash flood warnings. You got the Amber Alerts and other presidential alerts. And again, there's where you can go on your phone, settings, notifications, government alerts. You can also go to ready.gov/alerts to get more information on how to make sure your phone is set up to receive this vital information. We also, if you're looking for a mobile app, the Weather Service does not have its own app at this point. We partner with a bunch of private entities, and they use our data. You'll probably see the NOAA logo or the National Weather Service logo on a lot of those apps. Those apps are not from us at the Weather Service. They're private apps, but they are using our data. Our partners with the Red Cross have an app that we kind of push people or steer people to, and you can find that there at the link at the bottom. It has an audible siren even when the app is closed, so it kind of works like that NWE alerts that'll make sure that you hear information that you need to hear. So I'd encourage you to take a look at the Red Cross app if you need an app to let you know what's going on. All right, we're also on Facebook and X. So if you have any questions or comments or storm reports, you want to show us a cool picture of the water flowing by your house, or we had one time where we had a flash flood with a hay bale that had gotten hit by lightning, so it was on fire floating past a ranch. We love to get those Facebook reports. Anything you guys can tell us out there, the ground truth, helps us to get our message out and to tailor our message to what's happening. So please visit our Facebook and X pages and let us know what's going on in your area when weather's getting nasty. It really does help us out, and you're certainly not bothering us by doing that. So again, turn around. All right, so like I said, the main message with flooding across the Weather Service, most people that die in flooding die in their car. So turn around, don't drown is our motto. Again, it's always better to take a few minutes or maybe a few hours even to take a different route, or to wait till the water goes down instead of pushing a bad situation and ending up in your car. And especially in Montana, you could be out in the middle of somewhere where there's nobody sees that you got washed off the road. And then you could be in big trouble. So don't try to push it even though you think you can. It's better to just wait it out and get home safe. All right, so that's what we do as the Weather Service. We try to get the information out to you ahead of time, and then during events as quick as we can with those warnings. And we'll be on the Facebook, we'll be on X, have information on our front page. There's all places that you can go and take a look at that. You got the gauges that are available for you to monitor what's going on the rivers and creeks and streams in your area. And so there's a lot of information, the radar as well. So please check those out. And if you have any questions, give us a holler about it. We'll point you in the right direction if you're having issues. So looking at the spring, summer weather outlook. So what are we going for hydrology as we go forward here? And first, taking a look back, looking at the temperature anomalies here for the last year or so. And you can see we're in the yellows and oranges. So we've been above average for temperatures for the last year. For precip, there's a few spots that have done pretty well over the last year. So basically east of Billings along I-94, just cutting off before you get to Miles City. So central portion of Rosebud County, back into Treasure and down into the Bighorns, picked up decent precip. But really most of southeast Montana has been pretty dry, especially in the middle of the winter. We got a lot of rain, or excuse me, a lot of snow with a lot of snow water equivalent precipitation during February for areas in the central and west that didn't really translate out to the east. We're in a little bit of a deficit there. Hopefully going forward over the next week or so, we'll get some more precipitation out there, and then we'll take a look here in a minute at the trends and where we might go for the rest of the spring into the summer. Current soil moisture, not terrible. I mean, most places are pretty close to within 10% of average. But there are some locations around that are a little bit below out toward Wheatland County, Golden Valley, along the Muscle Shoal River, and then out into far eastern part of Fallon, Carter County, and northern Custer. So, but overall, not too bad. It was worse as we got into the fall. It's improved a little bit in some places, and then as we see the snow melt start to work in, that'll start to improve some of these areas, especially in the west, as we go forward in time. Here's the U.S. Drought Monitor. So keeping southeast Montana down into north central Wyoming, still in a D1 to D2, moderate to severe drought. And the rest of the area for our forecast area anyway is right about normal for precipitation, like I said, through the winter. So no drought at this time over the central and western portions of our forecast area. Just that eastern Montana that's still holding into that drought category. Looking at the drought tendencies, so going through June, what do they expect to have happen? And right now, they're not expecting a change in drought status for areas that are currently seeing the drought. So no big relief as far as the long-term patterns anyway go. There certainly could be some short-term patterns and some short-term precipitation events that improve things. But there could also be some short-term things that make things a little bit worse. And so they kind of cancel each other out for right now. And the forecast currently for the next few months is to persist that drought for southeast Montana and actually into northeast Montana as well. Just want to take a look here really quick. What does Miles City usually see for precipitation? And looking at March, go from about 0.6 of an inch to almost 1.5 inches as we get into April. May and June are our wet months. So we're looking at almost 2.2 inches and 2.5 inches during that period. And then we start to taper off a little over 1.5 inches there in July. And then by the time we get into August, September, and October, we're looking at around 1 inch on average for each of those months before we get into the dry winter months. So we really do depend on these April, May, June, and into July systems to help give the bulk of the moisture for the year in southeast Montana. Want to show where the snow is currently. This was from a week or so ago, but we're actually looking really good. The systems that we got in January into February and early March have been wet. A lot of Pacific moisture associated with them, so the mountains got a lot of snow. They've been struggling early in the season. We didn't get a lot in October, November, early December, so we were well behind. But we've made that up. Most of the basins here, the Yellowstone, the Bighorn, the Tongue, are doing pretty good. The Powder is lagging. That southern portion of the Bighorns kind of was out of the main precipitation channel, so They're at 76%, but that's better than it was. It was down in the 40s a few weeks back. So they've gotten some more snow up there. Overall, for the tongue, it looks good as far as water supply goes, and the Yellowstone as well, right around 100%. And this is just looking at the same information but for Wyoming. So again, those areas over toward the Black Hills are suffering a little bit, in the southern Bighorn and the Powder, but everybody else in Wyoming is looking pretty good. And so any of the water that we have that comes into the Yellowstone from the Bighorn or from Yellowstone Park, that water is all looking in pretty good shape as far as the snow water content in the mountains goes. So let's look at what's going on for seasonal temperatures and precipitation going out in this forecast through June. Again, looking at the temperature outlook, equal chances. So there's no long range pattern that's showing things being above or below normal. So sitting towards normal. Looking at the precipitation outlook, you can see that big below normal bullseye down there in the four corners, and that kind of bulges up a little bit towards southern Montana and northern Wyoming. So there's a slight lean in those areas toward below normal, but the rest of Montana is in seasonal or around normal chances, equal chances of above, below, or seasonal going through June. So that's good. It doesn't, we're certainly not seeing a pattern that's going to lock us out of precipitation or bring a really big heat wave that's going to dry things out. We'll see how it goes as we go through the rest of the spring and into the summer. Let's look at the Tongue River at Miles City and what the seasonal flood outlook looks like. And right now you can see the minor floods at 10 feet here in the yellow line, and all of our forecasts here are less than a 10% chance of getting to minor flood stage. That normal peak flow time is about the last week of May into the first couple of weeks of June is normally when we see the peak. So right now, chances of flooding look really low. That doesn't mean things can't change. Again, flooding can be determined by how fast that snowpack melts that's in our mountains, and also what the soil moisture is in the plains, because a lot of that water that comes into the river can get pulled out through the sides of the river channel and into the surrounding soils and not ever make it downstream. So those kind of things, if we get some wet period and we get that snow to come out fast, you can still end up with a flood season, even though the current predictions right now are for it to be less than a 10% chance of getting to that minor flood stage on the Tongue. Here's the Yellowstone River for the same peak here, and looking at minor flood stage here at about 77,871 CFS, cubic feet per second, which is the flow. Right now, we're going to stay well below that. Right now, looking at 10% to 25% chance of getting up to about 35,000 CFS. So right now, looking good as far as, again, that 100% snowpack in the mountains, and then the dry soils, that's what's kind of keeping this flood threat low. So hopefully everything will come out nice and gentle and we'll have enough water for everybody to use, but not so much that we have flooding impacts. So looking at the regional, for other places besides just Miles City, the only place that we're seeing any real possibility of flooding risk right now is the Little Bighorn at Hardin. And that's not untypical for that area to get some flooding coming out of the northern Bighorns. Again, still sitting about average. It'd just be a matter of how fast water comes out. But that's really the only place that right now we're monitoring for any kind of flood concern at this time. We'll certainly keeping an eye on everything as we go through time. But right now, everything's looking pretty good as far as flooding goes. So looking at the summary here of what's going on, river flooding events in our region are driven by big precipitation systems, like we talked about earlier, those 3-day events where you just get 4 or 6 inches of precip in an event, and having that arrive during snowmelt season. So if we've already got rivers are full, so we get into mid-May or late May, early June, and the rivers are full, and then we add a whole bunch of water on top of it, that's what drives our river flooding in this part of the country. Snowpack alone is generally not enough to produce the flooding. All these rivers have been carved out over eons from the snowpack melting alone. So there's just generally from snowpack, you're not going to end up with flooding because those rivers are deep enough to withhold that. It's only when we start adding in the precipitation and the wet soils and that kind of thing that we start to get issues with flooding. Current conditions and runoff forecasts are not advertising significant river flooding at this time. So again, just keep an eye out for those big spring precipitation events. Make sure you stay tuned to our webpage for all the products that I laid out earlier in this presentation. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to give us a call. And like I said, we don't have a problem answering your questions. If not, you can jump on Facebook or X and put your questions in there, and we'll get back to you with that. If you want to get involved, we have a program called CoCoRaHS, Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network, and report rainfall and snowfall in your community. So it's a volunteer network that measures rain, hail, snow data, and reports the data onto the web. You can do it daily. You can do it just when there's a precip event or whatnot. It helps to fill in the gaps in our coverage. And we can only have so many automated systems out there because they're expensive. So if you're interested in, or maybe you're already doing it, maybe you're already measuring rain and snow and hail and whatnot, you can become part of this program and go to cocorahs.org or contact our office and we can point you in the right direction. Really need spotters, so this program really helps us out, and we appreciate all the information. So that ends my presentation here. That's all I got. Certainly open for questions. Again, Todd Chambers, I'm a senior forecaster here in Billings, but just about anybody else in the office when you call can answer your questions on hydrology issues. So again, feel free to take advantage of our expertise. Get in touch with us when you need to. Thad, any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Chambers? All right, Todd, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.